Hi, my name is Dan here at Brooks & Kirk and welcome to our channel where we aim to provide content for people who currently work in or are thinking of working in the further education sector. This video is all to do with ways that we can involve learners throughout the teaching and the assessment process. You might find this really useful if you're completing an education and training or assessor qualification. You can find out more about the courses that we have to offer by clicking on the link in the video description. What will we be covering in this video? Well, I'm going to be discussing how to involve learners during the process and why it's important to do so. I'm going to talk about what information should be made available to candidates throughout the assessment practice and why it's important to do that. And I'm going to link in with how peer and self-assessment can be implemented within our teaching lessons and assessment activities to include and involve learners more thoroughly. If you find our content useful, kindly hit that like button because it really does help us out with those YouTube algorithms. If you want to be notified about future content uploads, click that bell notification button and you'll be the first to find out when new content drops. Right, let's start off with the very basics then. The chances are you're going to be delivering maybe face-to-face sessions or even distance sessions. You're going to be assessing on site, or you might even be assessing remotely. But what's really crucial information that we share with the candidate is we're going to need to give them advance notice of the dates of these events, the times, what time they should be there and when it's going to start, and most importantly, where it is in the first place. Another important thing that we must share is something called an appeals and complaints procedure. Well, what is one? An appeals and complaints procedure should have clear steps as to what a candidate, a learner, an employer should follow in order to raise an appeal against an assessment decision, or even raise a complaint if they feel that aggrieved about something. It needs to document who to contact in this eventuality, and whilst doing so we should be managing the complainers or appealers' expectations. And what I mean by this is we all as human beings will have different expectations in life. Some people who like to plod along will probably might not expect a reply for a month, 2 months. That might be fine for them. So stating when they're going to get a response, by whom, and what that response would likely contain is just a great way of managing their expectations to try and alleviate any negativity or negative emotion at all. Why? Why do we do this then? Why do we need an appeals and complaints procedure? We've got to treat our learners fairly, our employers fairly. You can't give preference to one person because they shout the loudest, for example. So it's about making sure it's fair, it's documented, and to ensure that whatever the resolution is, it's in keeping with what other people may have an experience with. So to summarise then, learners need to have access to this appeals and complaints procedure and all other policies that training providers must have. Another important set of information we should be sharing with our learners is something called the awarding body assessment criteria. So here we've got a screenshot, a little snippet of a piece of assessment criteria found in a Pearson Edexcel specification. And you can clearly see that we've got some learning outcomes, assessment criteria, and Pearson have even gone down to the effort of giving us some amplification to kind of set the stall out on what we could likely expect to hit that. Not all awarding bodies give you this, however, but nevertheless it's useful to have. And by sharing it with our learners, they get an understanding of what we, as the assessors, are looking for in order to pass a piece of evidence. If they want access to it, it's available for them. They can see from our point of view as the trainers, as the assessors, what we're looking for and where our assignments have been constructed from as a consequence. Now, another thing that might be useful to share is something called a course schedule, often known as a scheme of work. organisations will use different titles. The key thing about one of these is a course schedule should give your learners a clear understanding of what topic is to be covered in which order, so that they can see a snapshot of what skills, what knowledge, what understanding that they're going to be exploring and evidencing throughout their learning journey. It might be really useful to share that with your candidates so they can see exactly what they're working on and when. And hopefully it just provide a nice clear overview of their entire course programme. What I've got here is a screenshot of an assessment plan that we use here at Brooks & Kirk. In fact, you'll be required to use this for Unit 2 and Unit 3 of the Assessor course if you're studying that with us. The purpose of this document is something that you should be able to give to your learner, and they should know exactly what to do, what you're asking them to do, and what evidence it's going to be hitting as part of their qualification. Because in here we have things like the unit number, outcome and assessment criteria. We're explaining to the candidate what we're requiring them to do in this activity, in this assessment, and then we're telling them what they need to submit to us for grading. It does have to be student friendly, of course. The target audience for this is your learner, so they need to be able to understand the language that you're using. In addition to this, you will always find that you give them we should always be giving them a deadline to work to ensure that you maintain effective progress and appropriate progress throughout the programme. Inside of this assessment plan, you probably would like to give them success criteria as well, embedded in it. Well, what is success criteria? Think of success criteria as a recipe. If you're baking a cake, you've got your ingredients. And it's kind of what success criteria is. It's your ingredients for success in that assignment or in that assessment. You spell it out, and you're something you can measure, that you can almost tick off, I guess, to prove that they are in preparation to submit that assignment. You should, if you're doing a classroom session, you should probably have this written on a whiteboard or on your projector or whatever medium that you're using. Sugar paper is absolutely fine. Not a problem. We still do use that in education for sure. And any handouts that they're taking away to help them complete that project or assignment, you should have that success criteria listed. If you're assessing them using online portfolio tools like Moodle, OneFile, or whatever it is that you may be using, share that success criteria on that assignment description. It must be student friendly, just like the assessment plan. It is for your learner, so try not to include vague, ambiguous and monotonous language. Did you like what I did there? It should just be, short, simple sentences that, regardless of your academic background or your whether English is a second language, you should be able to access that language. Let me give you a bit of example of what some success criteria could look like. Often people will put it in a table like this. As you can see, I've got 5 things for success in this assignment, and it's measurable. Look, the first one, take minutes for 3 different meetings. The student then knows, well, if they've only got 2, well, it's not finished. That's fair enough. I've also put in here that those minutes must be distributed within 5 working days. It could be better actually. It should be within 5 working days of the meeting. That would be better language. But you see my point here. We've got something that we can measure, and the learner could perhaps measure and even tick off as they're going through their assignment or specific assessment activity. Which does kind of lead me nicely into self-assessment. This is a tool that where learners can evaluate and check their own progress against that criteria. If they're doing a reflective account or some sort of reflective journal, they may even wish to do SWOT analysis. There's plenty of videos out there that will explain what a SWOT analysis is that will do it far better than I would, so I won't go into too much about it. But it's a great technique to help your learners be reflective and self-reflective individuals. And ultimately, it hopefully, fingers crossed, will allow them to take a bit more ownership of their learning, of their studies, of their course progress. Put them in the driving seat. Look, it's Chris that chose these images. It's not my sense of humour, I promise. Ultimately, though, it will help your learners to feel a bit more motivated that they're making progress, and it will help them build that confidence moving forward. And hopefully, you should have a nice, timely completion and learners achieving what they set out to achieve in the assessment plan. Just be mindful, though, learners can only take part in a self-assessment activity if they have a good understanding of that criteria. If, I think I know what that's about, I'm pretty sure it means this, and they're not 100% certain, then they could be just leading themselves off on a different path that might not necessarily be correct. So you do still have to check their knowledge and their understanding of that before you'll delegate whatever activity it is that you're getting them to do. Another useful tool for engagement is peer support and peer assessment. Well, what is it? It is a great tool for both parties, whether you're the mentee or whether you're the mentor. Let me give you an example. So it could well be that a mentor, whom is an individual that's picked it up quite quickly, is quite confident in that subject, they may be supporting a learner that hasn't quite grasped that concept correctly yet. For the mentor, it's fantastic for them because they're embedded their own knowledge. They're cementing that by telling it to somebody else. It's fantastic for the mentee, the person receiving that feedback, because they're getting a second bite to the cherry, so to speak. They're getting a different person, give them that fundamental knowledge, maybe even in a different way. It's also quite useful if you've got people lacking in confidence sometimes. Some people don't want to approach the teacher, don't want to approach their assessor or their tutor in fear of looking a bit silly or something like that. Obviously that's not ideal, but it does happen. Allowing them to approach a friend or a colleague can really help their overall confidence. So it boosts the confidence of not only the mentor but also the mentee, the peer assessor, and the person whose work is being peer assessed. Fantastic idea. Both parties, though, do need to have a good understanding of that criteria again, just like self-assessment. So you can't just implement it in your lessons and in your activities without having a true understanding that they can do it. There are problems, especially in the world of assessment, because if you're doing some sort of peer assessment activity and peer mentor, how do you, as the assessor, truly know that the person who's submitted that work, it is actually their authentic evidence and not that of their colleague? You just got to be a bit careful. Another thing as well is if you pair the wrong people together, they may clash, and especially if you've got rivals that are constantly kind of chipping away at each other's ideas in maybe not the most tasteful manner. If you put them together, it might do more damage than it does good. So just be conscious of pairing people of a similar, maybe even friends. It's a great idea, to be honest. But just be mindful in assessment. You've got to be sure it's their authentic evidence and not somebody else's. Okay, some other things to think about then. When we're planning any sorts of assessments, involve them. Involve the person we're actually assessing, because if we plan that assessment with them, we can have that conversation to ensure that their needs are met. We are responsible for ensuring every learner's, to the best of our ability, we're making those reasonable adjustments to cater for their additional needs. But it is not just special educational needs. It's also about stretching people that may pick it up quite quickly. We don't want them to get bored and lose motivation, so you might want to put something in there to stretch and develop them and push them a bit higher or even above and beyond that of the assessment criteria of the qual. There's nothing wrong with doing that. Try to get to know your learners and what jobs they do and their employers. What are their everyday activities? What is a big one-off project that company or organisation is about to start? Because if you know that information, it will help you when you're trying to identify holistic assessment opportunities. If you know they're doing a massive project, a search engine optimization project for their marketing campaign, then why not develop an assignment that's related to that, generate some realistic work product evidence, perhaps. It's a buzzword right there, though. Holistic. What is it? We cover this a lot more in a task 10, so I'm not going to go into too much depth, but in summary, a holistic assessment is something where we as the assessors try to link similar criteria, similar activities, relatable units, so we're developing and devising an assignment or an assessment that could probably cross over multiple things at once. We just need to take note of what assessment type is it. Are we trying to assess knowledge of the person, or are you trying to assess the competency? And we can see that in the verbs. If they've got to be able to do something, then that's a competency, because they can't pass unless we've seen that they've done it. If they've got to explain the function of, or define the purpose, or evaluate, then this is more to do with a knowledge type criteria. So when we're holistically planning, we will try and aim to get different assessment types, whether it's knowledge or competency, together, bundled together, to reduce the quantity and the burden of big, large assignments. Right, okay, let's summarise then. Why do we bother to involve learners? Well, it helps us to identify those initial learning needs. What are their previous knowledge, skills or behaviours? What have they done before? What interrelated qualifications do they have? That's, a fundamental concept of doing initial assessment. If we involve them in that discussion, then we can help shape the delivery and shape the course tailored to their needs. It's all about recognition of those current skills and where they're currently at, so that we can build upon them. Involving learners will help the candidate to negotiate their own targets, negotiate those deadlines. If it's something that they have fed into themselves, fingers crossed, they're more likely to work towards them and take ownership of that. And if they've customised that assessment and given us a little bit of an insight as to what jobs that they're currently up to, it's going to allow for more authentic, naturally occurring evidence to be collected. There's no point setting a series of targets or assessments that they can't achieve in the time that you've given them. So allowing them to discuss that will make that workload more manageable for them and not too overbearing and demotivating and demoralising and all of these sorts of negative words. On the contrary, it will do the opposite. Well, that's enough waffling from me for one video. If you did like the content, well, you made it this far, so yeah, pop a like, that would be excellent. It really helps us with our own motivation in doing this job, so that would be fantastic. And if you wish to write a comment as to what you think works in your environment, yeah, that'd be fantastic. Let's build that community together, and kindly subscribe for further content. Speak to you soon.